Hannah thought she was just a small-town Wyoming girl, but when she walked down the aisle to marry billionaire Aiden Blackwood, secrets unraveled, enemies struck, and love was tested like never before. In a world of wealth, betrayal, and passion, would their love survive, or was it all just an illusion? Aiden Blackwood, the billionaire with a lonely heart, New York's skyline glittered like a kingdom of glass and steel, and at its peak stood Aiden Blackwood, a billionaire who had conquered everything except his own loneliness. He was a man who closed billion-dollar deals with a single signature, who commanded power with just a glance. But when the lights of his empire dimmed at night, when the city fell into a hush, an emptiness settled over him like an invisible weight. His life was a perfectly scripted masterpiece. Private jets, luxury penthouses, exclusive parties. Yet, beneath the surface, he felt nothing. Success had filled his pockets, but it had left his heart hollow. One evening, as he sat in his office, drowning in contracts and figures, his best friend, Ryan, leaned against the desk and smirked. "You need a break, man. Go somewhere where no one knows you. No board meetings, no media, just you, being a regular guy for once." Aiden scoffed at the idea, but that night, as he stared at the city lights from his penthouse, something inside him whispered, "What if?" And so, for the first time in years, Aiden Blackwood disappeared. Hannah Carter, the girl with a hidden past. Hannah Carter lived in a world far removed from New York's chaos. In a quaint little town in Wyoming, her flower shop, Wildflower Blooms, was her safe haven. She loved the way flowers could brighten even the darkest days. She believed in their silent language, the way roses spoke of love, lilies of purity, and sunflowers of hope. To the world, she was just a small-town florist, a woman who carried warmth in her smile and kindness in her touch. But behind that serene exterior, she hid a past that could shake the very foundation of her peaceful life. She wasn't just a florist. She wasn't just a simple girl. She was running from a world that once belonged to her. The first meeting, a chance encounter. Aiden arrived in Wyoming, seeking anonymity. No press, no tailored suits, no grand entrances, just a rented cabin on the outskirts of town, and a desperate need for silence. One afternoon, as he wandered through the town, a small flower shop caught his eye. The sign above the door swayed gently in the breeze. Wildflower Blooms. And standing there, sunlight catching the golden strands of her hair, was a woman unlike any he had ever met. She wasn't dripping in diamonds. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She was simply arranging flowers, humming softly, completely lost in her own little world. Something about her, her grace, her simplicity, her effortless beauty, pulled him in. He stepped inside. The scent of roses, fresh lavender, and morning dew wrapped around him like a forgotten memory. "Excuse me." His deep voice broke the peaceful silence. Hannah looked up, her hazel eyes locking onto his, and then she smiled, a genuine warm heart-stopping smile. "Hi there, what can I get for you? Are you looking for something special? A bouquet for someone you love?" Aiden hesitated. No one had ever asked him something so human, so normal. "I don't know much about flowers," he admitted. "I just need something that makes a person happy." She tilted her head, studying him. "Flowers don't just make people happy. They tell stories." "What story are you trying to tell?" For the first time in a long time, Aiden was speechless. She wasn't intimidated by him. She wasn't treating him like a billionaire. To her, he was just a man who needed something beautiful in his life, and that realization hit him harder than he expected. A connection begins to bloom. From that day on, Aiden found himself returning to Wildflower Blooms, sometimes with a reason, sometimes without. He told himself it was just curiosity, just the need to escape his own mind. But deep down, he knew the truth. It was her, Hannah. She was unlike anyone he had ever met. She didn't care about his wealth, didn't ask about his business, didn't look at him with expectation or fear. She simply existed, and somehow, her existence brought him peace. One evening, as they sat outside the shop, watching the sun dip below the horizon, she turned to him. "You always seem so serious, Aiden." He let out a low chuckle, shaking his head. "That's because my world doesn't allow mistakes. There's no room for emotions, no room for anything real." Hannah studied him for a moment, then reached into a small basket beside her, pulling out a single white daisy. "Then maybe it's time you learn how to live outside your world." She tucked the flower into his palm, her fingers brushing against his. Aiden felt the warmth of her touch seep into his skin, and for the first time in years, he wondered, what if he let himself feel something real? But what Aiden didn't know was that Hannah wasn't just a florist. She was a woman with a secret that could destroy everything between them. Aiden's restlessness. Aiden had always been a man of logic, a man who made calculated decisions. But with Hannah, nothing made sense. Every morning, he found himself heading toward wildflower blooms, as if drawn by an invisible force. The routine that had once defined his life, meetings, phone calls, business deals, had faded into the background. Now his world smelled like roses and wild lavender. Now his world was her. One evening, as he stood outside the shop, watching Hannah arrange a bouquet, he realized something terrifying. He didn't want to leave. For the first time in his life, Aiden Blackwood wanted to stay in one place. But how could a man like him, who belonged to a world of luxury and power, ever belong in Hannah Carter's quiet little life? Hannah's conflicted heart. Hannah had built walls around herself, high, unbreakable walls. She had promised herself that she would never let her past catch up to her, that she would never allow herself to be vulnerable again. Yet, every time Aiden walked into her shop, those walls trembled. She had never met a man like him. Aiden was intense, reserved, and deeply guarded. Yet when he looked at her, there was something in his eyes, something raw, something broken, and despite every warning in her heart, she felt herself falling. But Hannah knew the truth. She knew that if Aiden ever discovered who she really was, this illusion of happiness would shatter into a million pieces. Because she wasn't just a small-town florist. She was Hannah Kensington Carter, heiress to a billion-dollar empire, and she had been running from that life for years. A night of unspoken desires. It was a chilly evening, when Aiden showed up at her shop, just as she was closing. "You're late today," she teased, trying to ignore the way her heart pounded at the sight of him. He smirked, stepping closer. "You keep track of my schedule now." She rolled her eyes. "Maybe." Aiden leaned against the wooden counter, watching her with unreadable eyes. "Come with me." She frowned. "Where?" "Just come." Something about the way he said it made her breath hitch. She hesitated for only a second, before grabbing her coat. He took her to the outskirts of town, to a quiet field where the stars stretched endlessly above them. Hannah gasped. "It's beautiful." Aiden watched her, his expression softer than she had ever seen before. "Yeah, it is." They sat on the hood of his car, wrapped in silence. The tension between them was electric, humming with something unsaid. "Why did you really come to Wyoming, Aiden?" she finally asked. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Because I was tired of living a life that didn't feel real." She turned to face him. "And does this feel real?" Aiden looked at her, then really looked at her. The way her hair cascaded down her shoulders, the way the wind played with the loose strands, the way the moonlight kissed her skin. And before he could stop himself, he reached out, his fingers brushing against her cheek. "Yes," he murmured. Hannah's breath hitched. "Aiden." He moved closer, his lips just a whisper away from hers. "Tell me to stop, Hannah." But she didn't, and when their lips finally met, it was like fire and poetry. like the world had melted away, leaving only the two of them behind. The fear of truth. As the days passed, Aiden and Hannah grew closer. Their moments became stolen glances, lingering touches, whispered confessions. But with every moment of happiness, fear gnawed at Hannah's soul. How long could she keep the truth from him? How long before Aiden discovered that she wasn't just an ordinary girl? And when that moment came, would he still look at her the same way? Aiden's first glimpse of the past one evening. As Aiden walked into wildflower blooms, his phone buzzed. "Ryan, where the hell are you, Aiden? Do you even realize how much of a mess you've left behind in New York?" Aiden sighed. He wasn't ready to go back. He didn't even know if he ever wanted to go back. Just then, something caught his eye, a newspaper sitting on the counter. It was an old edition, slightly crumpled. His gaze skimmed over the front page, until he saw it, a picture of Hannah. But not here, not in this town. She was in a grand ballroom, dressed in an expensive gown, standing beside a man in a suit. The headline read, "The Disappearance of Hannah Kensington Carter, the billionaire heiress, who vanished without a trace." Aiden's blood ran cold. He lifted his gaze slowly, his heart pounding, and when Hannah turned to face him, the guilt in her eyes told him everything. Aiden's betrayal. Aiden stood frozen, the newspaper trembling in his hands. The woman he had fallen for, the woman who made him believe in something real, was nothing but a lie. Hannah Kensington Carter, the missing heiress. His mind reeled. She had lied to him, deceived him, made him believe she was just a simple florist from a small town in Wyoming, when in reality, she belonged to the same elite world he had been trying to escape. The betrayal cut deep. "Aiden, I can explain," Hannah started, her voice breaking, her hazel eyes pleading. "Explain." His voice was cold, sharp. "Explain how you lied to me, from the very beginning. How you made me believe you were someone else." Hannah felt her breath hitch. She had known this moment would come, but she wasn't ready for the storm in his eyes, the raw, unfiltered hurt. "I never meant to lie to you," she whispered. I wanted to be someone else for a while, someone who wasn't trapped in a world full of power struggles, expectations, and betrayals." Aiden let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "And what was I, Hannah? A distraction, a part of your escape?" Tears burned at the edges of her eyes. "No, you were the only thing that ever felt real." But Aiden wasn't sure he could believe that anymore, because the one thing he hated more than anything was being played. And right now, it felt like that's exactly what she had done. Without another word, he turned and walked out of wildflower blooms, leaving Hannah standing there, heartbroken, a love in ruins. The days after Aiden's departure felt like an endless blur. Hannah barely left her flower shop. She couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. She kept replaying that moment over and over in her head. The way his voice had cracked, the way his eyes had turned cold. She had lost him, and it hurt more than she had ever thought possible. Meanwhile, Aiden had returned to New York, but he felt like a ghost in his own life. He attended meetings, signed contracts, made decisions, yet everything felt empty. His penthouse, once a place of comfort, now felt suffocating, because no matter how much he tried to bury it, his heart was still in Wyoming, still with her. But how could he ever trust her again? The unexpected reunion. One evening, as Hannah was locking up her shop, a sleek black car pulled up in front of her. She stiffened when the door opened, and Ryan Blackwood stepped out. "Aiden's best friend." "You need to come with me," Ryan said, his tone unreadable. Hannah's heart pounded. "Why?" Ryan hesitated before saying, "Because Aiden is drowning without you." Her breath caught. "And if you don't fix this, he's going to lose himself again." Despite everything, despite the fear, despite the pain, she knew one thing. She couldn't let him go. Aiden's walls crumble. Hannah arrived at Aiden's penthouse, her heart racing. The moment she stepped inside, she felt the weight of his loneliness. The curtains were drawn, the room dim. Empty whiskey glasses sat on the coffee table, and there, sitting by the window,
staring at the city lights with a haunted look in his eyes, was Aiden. He turned when he heard her footsteps. "What are you doing here?" His voice was hoarse, guarded. Hannah swallowed hard. "Because I couldn't stay away. Because I love you, Aiden." His eyes darkened. "Love?" He let out a dry laugh. "You expect me to believe that after everything?" Tears welled in her eyes. "Yes, because it's the truth." She took a step closer. "I know I lied about my past, and I regret it more than anything. But what I felt for you, what I feel for you, it was never a lie." Aiden clenched his jaw, looking away. "I don't know if I can trust you, Hannah." Her voice wavered, but she stood her ground. "Then let me prove it. Let me fight for us." He looked at her then, really looked at her. He saw the raw vulnerability in her eyes, the desperation, the love, and for the first time in weeks, something inside him softened. But he wasn't ready to give in so easily. "Then prove it," he said, his voice low, dangerous. "Show me that you're willing to fight for this, for me." Hannah met his gaze, determination burning in her chest. "I will. A love worth fighting for." Over the next few weeks, Hannah did everything she could to show Aiden that what they had was real. She didn't beg, she didn't force him. Instead, she showed him. She stood by him when he needed someone to talk to. She reminded him of the man he was when he was with her, not the cold billionaire, but the man who laughed, who cared, who felt. And slowly, Aiden's walls started to crumble. One evening, as they walked through Central Park, he finally spoke. "I don't want to be without you, Hannah." Her heart stopped. "Then don't." Aiden took a deep breath, as if preparing to dive into the unknown. Then he cupped her face, his eyes searching hers. "This scares me," he admitted. "Loving you scares me." Hannah's lips trembled as she whispered, "Me too." And then before another word could be spoken, his lips crashed against hers. This time, there was no hesitation, no fear, no doubts. Just them, just love. Aiden and Hannah's new beginning. For the first time in weeks, Aiden felt something other than anger or emptiness. He felt hope. Hannah had fought for him, proved to him that her love wasn't a lie. And now, standing in his arms, in the middle of Central Park, he made a silent promise. He wasn't going to let her go again. The next few weeks were magic. Aiden and Hannah spent their days rediscovering each other, rebuilding what had almost been lost. They walked through New York like they were the only two people in the world, shared late-night conversations over takeout, and stole kisses under city lights. For once Aiden allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they had found their happily ever after. But happiness is a fragile thing, and the past always has a way of catching up. A shadow from the past. One evening, as Aiden and Hannah walked into an upscale restaurant for dinner, a sharp voice cut through the air. So the lost heiress finally decided to come home. Hannah's blood ran cold. She turned, and there, standing with an arrogant smirk, was Nathan Sterling, the man she once trusted, the man who nearly destroyed her. Aiden tensed beside her, sensing the shift in her energy. "Who is he?" he asked quietly. Hannah swallowed hard. "The reason I ran away." Nathan's smirk widened as he stepped closer. "You left without a word, darling, and now you're back, parading around with New York's most untouchable billionaire. Interesting." Aiden's eyes darkened, his grip on Hannah's hand tightening. "You have 3 seconds to walk away," he said in a dangerously low voice. Nathan laughed. "Or what? You'll ruin me." "I'd love to see you try, Blackwood. But the truth is, you have no idea who you're dealing with." He turned back to Hannah, his expression turning serious. "You can't run forever, Hannah. Your family's empire still has unfinished business. You belong to that world whether you like it or not." And with that he walked away, leaving a suffocating silence behind. Hannah felt like the ground beneath her had disappeared. Aiden turned to her, his jaw clenched. "Tell me what he meant, Hannah." Her heart pounded. "I didn't tell you everything." His voice was quiet, but deadly. "Then start talking. The secret that could break them." Hannah took a shaky breath before finally telling him everything. "My father had arranged for me to marry Nathan Sterling." Aiden's stomach twisted. It wasn't a marriage of love, it was a business deal, a way to merge our family's wealth. But Nathan, he wasn't the man everyone thought he was. Aiden's hands curled into fists. Did he hurt you? Hannah hesitated, pain flashing in her eyes. Not physically, but he controlled me, manipulated me, made me feel like I had no choice. When I found out that he and my father were planning to use my inheritance for their own gain, I had no choice but to run. That's why I disappeared. Aiden inhaled sharply. The thought of anyone trying to force Hannah into a life she didn't want made his blood boil. And now he's back, Aiden muttered. Hannah nodded, fear flickering in her eyes. Nathan doesn't give up easily. He'll do whatever it takes to get what he wants. Aiden cupped her face gently, forcing her to meet his gaze. He won't touch you, I swear it. Hannah wanted to believe him, but deep down she knew this was just the beginning. The first attack a week later, Aiden received a message that made his blood turn to ice. A picture of Hannah, followed by a text, "She was mine first, and I always take back what's mine." Aiden's vision blurred with rage. Without a second thought, he called Ryan. "Find Nathan Sterling, now." Ryan was silent for a moment. "Aiden, that's not all." Aiden's chest tightened. "What?" "There was an attempt to break into Hannah's apartment last night." Aiden felt something inside him snap. That bastard was trying to get to her. Without another word, he stormed out, ready to do whatever it took to protect the woman he loved. But when he arrived at Hannah's flower shop, she wasn't there. His heart pounded. "Where is she?" Then his phone rang. A blocked number. He answered, his voice sharp. "Who is this?" Nathan's voice was smooth, mocking. "You didn't protect her well enough, Blackwood." Aiden's blood ran cold. Hannah was gone. Aiden's desperate search. Aiden turned into a man possessed. He tore through New York, calling in every favor, using every resource to track Nathan down. Ryan and his team scoured the city, but Nathan was smart. He had covered his tracks well. Hours passed, then a day, then two. Aiden was barely holding on, until finally, a breakthrough. One of Ryan's men traced a black SUV to an abandoned estate outside the city, and Aiden didn't hesitate. The rescue and a vow. When Aiden stormed into the estate, his heart nearly stopped. Hannah was tied to a chair, her face pale, her wrists bruised. Nathan stood beside her, smirking. "Well, that was fast." Aiden's rage exploded. "You made a mistake coming after her." Nathan chuckled. "Did I?" He pulled out a document. "She's still legally engaged to me." "Aiden, you can't take what already belongs to someone else." Hannah's voice was hoarse, but strong. "I was never yours, Nathan, and I never will be." Aiden moved in a flash, his fist colliding with Nathan's jaw. The man staggered back, blood dripping from his lip. "If you ever come near her again, I'll destroy you." Aiden's voice was lethal. Nathan wiped his mouth, laughing. "We'll see about that." But Aiden didn't care. He untied Hannah, pulling her into his arms. She clung to him, trembling. "I knew you'd come." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "I'll always come for you." And as they walked out together, Aiden made a silent vow. Nathan Sterling would never touch her again, because Hannah wasn't just some woman from his past anymore. She was his future. The calm before the storm. For the first time in weeks, Hannah felt safe. After Aiden rescued her from Nathan, he refused to let her out of his sight. She had moved into his penthouse, and despite the chaos surrounding them, she felt something she hadn't in a long time. Peace. Every morning, she woke up wrapped in his arms. Every night, he whispered words of love against her skin. "I won't let anything happen to you," Aiden told her one night, his voice firm. "Nathan is finished." Hannah wanted to believe that. She wanted to believe they had finally escaped the darkness. But the past wasn't done with them yet, and soon their love would face its greatest test, the scandal that changed everything. A week later, Aiden was in a high-stakes business meeting when his phone buzzed. A message from Ryan. "You need to see this, now." Aiden's chest tightened. He clicked the link Ryan had sent him, and his blood ran cold. The headline flashed across the screen, in bold letters. "Billionaire, Aiden Blackwood in secret affair with disgraced heiress Hannah Carter." A love built on lies. Aiden's jaw clenched as he read the article. It was brutal, ruthless. It painted Hannah as a manipulative gold digger who had faked her disappearance to escape a marriage alliance with Nathan Sterling, only to seduce Aiden Blackwood for power and wealth. And the worst part, the article included leaked private photos of Aiden and Hannah, intimate moments captured in stolen shots. Aiden felt rage explode inside him. He already knew who was behind this. Nathan. Ryan's call came seconds later. Aiden, we have a problem. The media is everywhere. Reporters are surrounding Hannah's flower shop. Your company's stocks are already taking a hit. And Nathan. Aiden's grip tightened on his phone. What about him? He just gave a press conference. He's claiming Hannah used you to escape her past. Aiden's vision turned red. Nathan wasn't just trying to ruin Hannah. He was trying to destroy them both.
Hannah's breaking point. Hannah stood in front of the television, frozen. Nathan was on the screen, his face carefully composed as he spoke to the press. I loved Hannah, he said, his voice full of false sincerity, and I tried to save her from herself. But she ran away. And now, she's using Aiden Blackwood, just like she used me. The reporters swarmed him with questions. Are you saying she planned all of this? Nathan gave a dramatic sigh. I'm saying she's always known how to play the game. Hannah's hands trembled. She could handle people calling her a liar. She could handle the whispers, the gossip, but dragging Aiden into this, trying to ruin him, that was unforgivable. She turned when she felt Aiden's presence behind her. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes burned with fury. He thinks he can destroy us, he murmured, stepping closer, but he underestimated one thing. Hannah swallowed. What? Aiden cupped her face, his touch fierce, possessive. I don't break that easily, and I don't let go of the woman I love. Tears welled in her eyes. Aiden. His lips crashed against hers, raw and desperate. It wasn't just a kiss, it was a promise. They would fight, together. The war begins. Aiden wasted no time. Find out who leaked the photos, he ordered Ryan, and get my legal team on this. I want Nathan buried under lawsuits by morning. Hannah meanwhile had her own battle to fight. She refused to let Nathan control the narrative. The next day she called a press conference. She stood before a sea of reporters, her heart pounding, but her voice was steady. Nathan Sterling has spent years trying to control my life, but he will not control my truth. She took a deep breath before continuing. I never used Aiden. What we have is real. Nathan is the one who has spent years manipulating the people around him, including me, and I refuse to be silent anymore. The reporters fired questions at her, but she stood her ground, and just when it seemed like things might calm down, Nathan struck again. This time he didn't just target Hannah, he targeted Aiden's business. The ultimate betrayal. Aiden walked into his company's headquarters, expecting to deal with damage control. Instead he was blindsided. Nathan Sterling just acquired 20% of our shares. Aiden's breath stalled. That's impossible, he growled. No one sells to him. His CFO hesitated. It wasn't just anyone. It was. He paused, looking uneasy. It was your board members. Betrayal twisted in Aiden's gut. Nathan had found a way in, and if he controlled enough shares, he could challenge Aiden's authority. Get me everything on Sterling's financial moves, Aiden ordered. If he wants a war, he'll get one. But as he stormed out of the office, another thought haunted him. Nathan wasn't just trying to destroy their love, he was trying to take everything from Aiden. And Aiden Blackwood never lost. Aiden's proposal, a love that can't be broken. That night, after another exhausting day of battle, Aiden walked into the penthouse and found Hannah sitting by the window, staring at the city lights. She looked up at him, exhaustion in her eyes. Are we going to survive this? she whispered. Aiden walked toward her, kneeling down in front of her. We're going to do more than survive, Hannah. Then without another word, he pulled a velvet box from his pocket. Hannah gasped. Aiden. He opened the box, revealing a breathtaking diamond ring. His voice was steady, fierce. Marry me, Hannah. Not because of the media, not because of Nathan, but because I love you, because I don't want to spend another day without you. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She had spent so long running, so long afraid, but looking into Aiden's eyes, she knew this was her home. Yes, she whispered, 1,000 times yes. Aiden crushed her to him, sealing their fate with a kiss that was full of love, fire, and forever. But even as they held each other, they knew Nathan wasn't done, and their love would have to withstand one final storm, one that could change everything. The calm before the chaos. For the first time in what felt like forever, Hannah and Aiden had a moment of peace. After the press conference, after Nathan's schemes, after the media circus, she had said yes. Yes to forever, yes to love, yes to a future where she was no longer running. Aiden had wasted no time in making their engagement public. The announcement was everywhere. On magazine covers, TV interviews, social media. Aiden Blackwood was engaged to the woman the world had once doubted. But Hannah didn't care about the world. She only cared about the man, who now held her heart in his hands. Are you ready for this? Aiden murmured one night, pulling her into his arms as they lay in bed. Hannah traced her fingers along his jaw. For what? A slow smirk spread across his lips. For forever, she smiled, her heart swelling with warmth. With you, always. But forever was still a battle they had to win, because Nathan wasn't finished, and this time, he was going to strike where it hurt the most. The wedding that almost didn't happen. Aiden wanted everything to be perfect for Hannah. He planned a wedding that was nothing short of a fairy tale. A private island, a ceremony under the stars, the most exclusive guest list. Nothing would ruin this, or so he thought. A day before the wedding, Hannah was in her bridal suite, admiring her dress, when her phone buzzed. An unknown number. Her heart pounded as she answered. You really thought I'd let you walk down that aisle? Hannah's breath caught. Nathan, what do you want? She whispered, gripping the phone tightly. His dark chuckle sent chills down her spine. You took something from me, Hannah, and now I'm going to take something from you. The line went dead, and seconds later, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the villa. Hannah ran. Her heart pounded as she followed the sound, her dress trailing behind her, and then she saw it. Aiden's mother, Eleanor Blackwood, standing over a collapsed Aiden. His face was pale, his breathing shallow. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. Aiden's fall. Hannah dropped to her knees beside him, shaking. Aiden, his eyes fluttered open, weak, unfocused. Hannah. Eleanor turned to her, panic in her eyes. He collapsed out of nowhere. We need to get him to a hospital. Hannah's mind was spinning. Nathan, he had said he'd take something from her. Had he poisoned Aiden? Had he done something to stop this wedding? She felt rage and fear fight for dominance inside her. Call an ambulance, she screamed, pressing a trembling hand to Aiden's cheek. Stay with me, please. Aiden's fingers weakly brushed hers. Don't let him win. Then his eyes closed, and Hannah's world shattered. The war for love. Hours later, Hannah sat outside the hospital room, her heart in pieces. Ryan and Aiden's security team had intercepted a suspicious drink Nathan had sent to the villa, laced with something dangerous. Aiden had been its target. Hannah's hands clenched into fists. I want him found. Ryan nodded. We're already on it. But Nathan's gone underground. Hannah's breath was shaky. He won't stop. Ryan hesitated. There's something else. Hannah turned, her stomach twisting at the look in his eyes. What? Ryan handed her a folder. Nathan left a message. A final blow. She opened it with trembling fingers, and then she froze. Inside were documents. Documents that proved Nathan was trying to take control of Aiden's company, and if Aiden didn't wake up in time, he'd lose everything.
Hannah's pulse roared in her ears. Nathan hadn't just tried to stop the wedding, he had tried to destroy Aiden's entire world, and she wasn't going to let him win. The reckoning Hannah had spent her whole life running, from her past, from her family's expectations, from the battles she thought she could never win, but not anymore. This time, she was going to fight, for Aiden, for their love, for their future. And so, when she stormed into Nathan's hideout, backed by Ryan, Aiden's security team, and a mountain of evidence, she was unstoppable. Nathan smirked when he saw her. "Ah, my runaway bride." Hannah's glare was cold. "You tried to kill Aiden." Nathan sighed, feigning innocence. "Did I? You have no proof." Hannah's lips curled. "Actually, I do." She tossed a folder onto the table. "Documents proving your attempt to buy out Aiden's company, security footage of your men delivering the poisoned drink, and audio recordings of your threats." Nathan's smirk faltered. Hannah leaned in. "You lose." The doors burst open, and the police walked in. Nathan's face twisted in rage. "You think this is over?" He spat. "I will destroy you, Hannah." She tilted her chin up. "You already tried." As the officers dragged him away, Hannah finally exhaled. It was over. Finally. A love that survived the fire. When Hannah returned to Aiden's hospital room, he was awake. His eyes softened when he saw her. "You look like you just won a war." She laughed through her tears. "I did." Aiden reached for her hand, his grip strong, steady. "Tell me everything." So she did. And when she was done, Aiden's gaze burned with something deeper, something unchangeable. "You saved me." Hannah smiled through her tears. "We saved each other." Aiden tugged her closer. "Marry me. Right now." She gasped. "Aiden, you're in a hospital bed." He smirked. "So, I'm not letting you out of my sight." "Let's do this, Hannah. No more waiting. No more delays. Just you and me." Tears filled her eyes. She had dreamed of this moment for so long, and now, she was ready. "Yes," she whispered. "Let's get married." Epilogue. A love that was always meant to be. A week later, in a small, intimate ceremony, on a beach, Hannah walked down the aisle, toward the man who had changed her life forever. There were no cameras, no press, just love, pure, unbreakable. Theirs. Aiden took her hands, his eyes full of everything. "I love you, Hannah Blackwood." She smiled, because finally, after everything, she was exactly where she was meant to be, forever. The honeymoon that changed everything. Hannah never thought she could be this happy. The salty ocean breeze danced around her, as she stood on the private villa's balcony, staring at the moonlit waves. The sound of the water crashing against the shore was hypnotic, soothing, but nothing was as intoxicating as the man standing behind her. Aiden, her husband. The thought sent a delicious shiver down her spine. Strong arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her against a firm chest. Lost in thought, "Mrs. Blackwood." Aiden's voice was husky, teasing, brushing against her ear like a caress. Hannah leaned into him, letting her head rest against his shoulder. "Just thinking about how perfect everything is." Aiden chuckled, his fingers tracing lazy circles on her bare arm. "I told you I'd give you the world." She turned in his embrace, her hand sliding up his chest. "You are my world." Something dark and possessive flashed in Aiden's eyes. "Say that again." Hannah smiled, feeling bold. "You are my world." A low growl rumbled in his throat, and then his lips crashed against hers. The kiss was hungry, demanding, consuming. Aiden didn't just kiss her, he devoured her. Hannah melted into him, her fingers threading through his hair as he lifted her into his arms, with effortless strength. "I need you," he murmured against her lips. Now, she barely had time to breathe before he carried her inside, setting her down on the silk-covered bed. The room was bathed in candlelight, the soft flicker casting golden shadows against their skin. Aiden hovered over her, his gaze filled with heat and reverence. "You are the best thing that's ever happened to me, Hannah." Her heart clenched at the raw emotion in his voice. "Then take me, Aiden. Show me I'm yours." A slow sinful smirk spread across his lips. "Oh sweetheart, you have no idea what you just started." And then, he did exactly that. The morning after Hannah woke up tangled in Aiden's arms, their bodies still pressed together beneath the sheets. Sunlight streamed through the open windows, casting a golden glow on his bare chest, his strong jawline, the satisfied smirk still lingering on his lips. She blushed, memories of the night before flooding her mind. As if sensing her thoughts, Aiden's arms tightened around her. Thinking about last night, he murmured against her hair. Hannah laughed softly. I don't think I'll ever forget last night. Aiden rolled onto his side, propping himself up on one elbow. Good, because I plan to make sure every night is even better than the last. She smirked, brushing a finger along his jaw. That sounds like a challenge. Aiden's eyes darkened with promise. Sweetheart, with you, I never lose. And just like that, he proved it all over again. Final thought, their love had survived hell, betrayal, and heartbreak, and now, it burned brighter than ever.